Welcome to another deep dive. You know I love when you all send in these awesome research papers, and this one is no exception.
Yeah.
This one is all about how we can use omics technologies to, well, really wrap our heads around COVID-19. How to understand it better and even treat it better. And lucky for us, we've got an expert here to break it all down.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and I agree this is really exciting research.
So I gotta say, right off the bat, this paper jumps into something called a population-centric approach to COVID-19.
Right.
Honestly, when I first read that, I was like, what in the world does that even mean?
Oh, yeah, it sounds kind of jargony, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
So help me out here. What are they talking about?
Basically, it means we're not just looking at the virus in isolation. We're zooming out and looking at how different groups of people, different populations, actually experience COVID.
Okay, so it's not just about the virus itself. It's about how different people react to it.
Exactly. It's recognizing that a one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare, well, it doesn't really cut it. This approach helps us, like scientists, understand how things like genetics, pre-existing conditions, even someone's lifestyle, all that can play a role.
Oh, so it's about personalizing healthcare based on all these different factors.
Yeah, and think about it. Disease severity, how well treatments work, it can all be different depending on the person.
That's so true. It's easy to forget that everyone's body is different. Everyone's kind of fighting their own unique battle.
Absolutely. That's what makes this research so important. We're getting closer to this more personalized understanding of health and disease, you know what I mean?
That makes a lot of sense. And the paper really drives that point home. It
Yeah.
even highlights how age, while definitely a factor, it's not the only risk factor for severe COVID. Obviously, we've heard a lot about that in the news, but it's interesting to see it spelled out in the research like that.
Oh, totally. Right, age matters, but there's more to the story. The paper even talks about how pre-existing conditions, and a compromised immune system, those can also play a huge role.
Right. Which again goes back to that idea that everyone is different.
Exactly. And that's where this omics stuff gets really interesting. For example, the paper talks about how people with certain gene mutations, right, could be more susceptible to a more severe case of COVID.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you saying that our genes, like our DNA, could actually determine how sick we get from a virus?
Yeah, to a certain extent, definitely. Scientists are finding that variations in certain genes, especially the ones related to immune response, can actually influence how our bodies fight off infections.
Wow. So it's like some people are just predisposed to getting hit harder by viruses like COVID because of their genes.
It's not quite that black and white. It's more like, genetics definitely play a part, but it's not the whole picture. Lifestyle, overall health, access to healthcare, all those things matter too.
Right, it's all interconnected.
Exactly. But understanding those genetic variations, well, that can be a game changer. It can help us identify people who might benefit from more preventative measures, or even early interventions.
That's wild. It's like a whole new level of personalized medicine.
Right. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. The paper also hints at how these gene mutations could actually influence how people respond to vaccines. Isn't that crazy?
Wait, so someone's genes could determine how well a vaccine works for them?
It's a really hot area of research right now, and yeah, it could have huge implications for future vaccines. Imagine a world where we can tailor-make vaccines for individuals based on their genetic makeup.
Whoa, talk about personalized medicine. That's like sci-fi stuff. And just when I thought it couldn't get any more mind-blowing, this paper throws another curveball. It brings up how even our microbiome, the bacteria living in our gut, can play a role in how severely we experience COVID. What's the connection there?
Think of it this way. Your gut microbiome is like this, like a hidden ecosystem inside you. This community of bacteria actually helps regulate your immune system. And get this, research is showing that when that microbiome is out of whack, like there's an imbalance, it can actually make you more vulnerable to a severe case of COVID.
So let me get this straight. Something as simple as gut health could actually impact how well our bodies fight off a respiratory virus. That's insane.
It's pretty wild, but it goes to show you how interconnected our bodies are. Seemingly unrelated things can have these ripple effects on our overall health.
Right, it's like this delicate balance. So what throws off that balance in our gut?
Oh, lots of things. Diet, stress, even certain medications.
Wow, it's like we're just starting to scratch the surface of how complex the human body really is. And this paper just keeps giving us more to think about. It also suggests that even vitamin deficiency, like not getting enough of certain vitamins, could impact the severity of COVID. Are we really saying something as simple as vitamins could make a difference?
It might sound surprising, but researchers are finding that metabolic factors like vitamin D levels, for example, could actually influence COVID outcomes.
Oh, interesting. So getting enough sunshine or, taking a vitamin supplement could actually play a role.
It's not a magic bullet or anything, but it's another piece of the puzzle.
Hmm.
And it goes back to that idea that taking care of your overall health, well, it's more important than ever, especially when we're talking about fighting off a virus.
I'm starting to see a theme here. It's like everything is connected from our genes to our gut to our vitamin levels. Like our bodies are these crazy, intricate machines.
Right. And this research, all this omics stuff, it's helping us understand just how those systems interact, how they influence each other, especially when it comes to something as complex as COVID-19.
And speaking of complex, we can't forget about long COVID,
Mhm.
which the paper also delves into. This is another area where omics technologies are giving us some really valuable insights.
Yeah, long COVID is a big concern. I mean, the lingering symptoms, the way it can really impact people's lives, it's a serious issue. But researchers are using these omics tools to dig deep and try to figure out what's going on, at a molecular level.
So trying to crack the code of why some people experience these long-term effects
Exactly.
really underscores how this virus can have long-lasting impacts way beyond the initial infection.
Absolutely. And that's why this research is so crucial. We're not just treating immediate symptoms, but trying to understand those long-term consequences and develop ways to support people who are still dealing with the effects, weeks, months, even years later. It really makes you think, about how we can take all this knowledge and actually use it to develop new treatments.
That's what I'm really curious about. Like, how is all this omics research actually being applied?
Well, in lots of exciting ways.
Yeah.
For one, it's helping researchers pinpoint potential drug targets. Like what specific molecules or pathways in the body should we be focusing on?
Right, so they're basically using this research to figure out how to actually attack the virus, right?
Exactly. And not just attack it, but do it in a way that's tailored to the individual, personalized medicine.
Okay, so less of a one-size-fits-all approach and more like a custom-made treatment plan.
You got it. And the paper actually mentions some pretty cool examples of this, like repurposed drugs and monoclonal antibodies. Have you heard of those?
Oh yeah, repurposed drugs, that's where scientists take existing medications, ones that are already approved for other things, and see if they work against COVID, right?
Yep. It's a brilliant strategy, honestly.
Yeah, it seems way more efficient than trying to create a brand new drug from scratch.
It is. It's way faster and more cost-effective. And that's where Omics comes in. It helps researchers zero in on which existing drugs might be worth testing.
Oh, so they're using omics to analyze the virus and figure out which drugs might be a good match.
Exactly. And it's already yielding some promising results. The paper mentions a couple of examples, remdesivir and molnupiravir.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about those in the news. How do those actually work?
So, remdesivir, it was originally developed to treat Ebola, but it turns out it might also have some activity against COVID. Basically, it messes with the virus's ability to replicate itself.
So like it's stopping the virus from making more copies of itself?
Pretty much, it throws a wrench in the works.
Interesting. And what about molnupiravir?
Okay, so molnupiravir, that was originally designed as a potential flu treatment. And it's pretty sneaky, actually. It basically introduces errors into the virus's genetic code as it's trying to replicate.
So it's like sabotaging the virus's blueprint so it can't build more copies of itself.
Exactly. Genius, right?
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But what about those monoclonal antibodies you mentioned? Those sound a lot more, I don't know, high tech.
They are pretty cutting edge. So monoclonal antibodies, they're lab-created proteins, but think of them like supercharged immune cells.
Okay.
They're designed to target specific parts of the virus, like the spike protein.
Oh, the one we hear so much about.
Yep, the one it uses to latch onto human cells.
Got it.
So these antibodies, they basically act like guided missiles, seeking out and destroying the virus, but without harming healthy cells.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Super precise. So the paper gives some examples of those too, right?
It does. It talks about bamlanivimab and atezolizumab. Those have been used in patients who are at high risk of developing severe COVID.
Wow, it's incredible how all this research is leading to such targeted treatments. But the paper also points out that sometimes it's not just about attacking the virus directly, right? It's about managing the body's own immune response.
You're right. Sometimes our own immune system can overreact.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that, like a cytokine storm.
Exactly.
Oh.
And that can cause some pretty serious problems. That's where immunomodulators come in.
Immunomodulator.
Yeah, those are drugs that help regulate the immune response. Some of them calm down an overactive immune system, others boost a weakened one.
Oh, I see. So it's like finding that sweet spot, that balance within the immune system.
You got it. It's not just about fighting the virus, it's about making sure the body's defenses are working effectively without going overboard.
That makes a lot of sense. And the paper mentions some examples of those drugs being used for COVID too, right?
Yep, tocilizumab and baricitinib are a couple of key ones.
It's fascinating to see how this research is moving us away from that one-size-fits-all approach to treating COVID.
hmm
It's about understanding the nuances of each person's body and tailoring treatment accordingly.
Absolutely. Omics is giving us the tools to do that, to embrace that complexity.
I love that, embracing the complexity. It's like we're finally starting to see the human body for what it really is. This incredibly intricate system where everything is connected.
I know. And the more we learn, the more amazing it becomes.
Totally agree. So we've talked about how omics is helping us understand individual risk factors, develop new drugs, even personalized treatment strategies. But there's still one big piece of the puzzle missing, right? Vaccines. How's all this research impacting the way we develop and deploy vaccines?
Vaccines, right. Such a crucial part of this whole story.
Oh, absolutely. And omics is playing a huge role there too.
Yeah. Tell me more.
Well, for one thing, it's helping us understand, like really understand, how different people respond to vaccines.
Okay, so not everyone reacts the same way.
Nope, definitely not.
Yeah.
And omics can help us figure out why. It's like peeking into the body's inner workings, seeing how those vaccine molecules are interacting with each person's unique biology.
So instead of just assuming everyone's going to have the same response, we can actually tailor our approach based on this research.
Exactly. It's all about moving towards, like, a more personalized vaccination strategy. And, omics is also shedding some light on why some people experience side effects from vaccines while others don't. Isn't that interesting? Oh, definitely. I mean, that's always been a bit of a mystery, hasn't it? Like, why do some people have strong reactions and others feel totally fine?
Right. But by analyzing genetic and immunological data, scientists are starting to identify, like, potential biomarkers that could predict these adverse reactions.
Whoa, so we can actually know ahead of time who might have a reaction and who might not.
That's the hope. It would be a huge step forward, for sure.
For sure. But what about new variants? We know this virus is constantly mutating, changing, evolving. How does omics help us keep up with that? Make sure our vaccines are still effective against whatever new version pops up.
Yeah, that's a big one. And genomic surveillance is a key part of the answer. Basically, scientists are constantly tracking the emergence and spread of new variants, analyzing their genetic makeup.
So they're keeping tabs on how the virus is changing.
Yep. And they can use that information to quickly assess whether the current vaccines are still a good match or if we need to tweak them, create updated versions.
So it's like a constant back and forth.
It is. It's a race against the virus, for sure. And Omics is giving us the tools we need to stay ahead. Actually, the paper specifically mentions the development of modified vaccines that target the Omicron variant, which spread like wildfire a couple of years ago.
Right, right. It seemed like every other week there was a new variant making headlines. But it's good to know scientists are using all this research to keep our vaccines up to date.
Oh, definitely. They're on it. And here's another interesting tidbit, something I didn't expect to see in this paper.
What's that?
Omics is actually helping us understand how vaccines impact the human microbiome. Remember how we talked about the gut microbiome and its role in the immune system?
Oh, yeah, that blew my mind. All those trillions of bacteria living in our gut, it's like a whole other world down there.
I know, it's wild. But it turns out vaccines can actually influence the composition and function of that microbial community.
Really? So vaccines don't just interact with our immune system, they also have an impact on our gut bacteria.
It's amazing, right? Just another reminder of how interconnected everything is in the human body.
And how much we still have to learn.
Exactly. But Omics is giving us the tools we need to explore all those connections, and develop even more effective and targeted interventions.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much, from individual risk factors to new treatments to vaccines. It's clear that omics is revolutionizing the way we approach COVID-19 and, honestly, healthcare as a whole.
I couldn't agree more. It's like we're finally moving away from that one-size-fits-all mindset and starting to embrace the beautiful complexity of each individual.
Right, like we're finally recognizing that each person is unique with their own set of strengths and vulnerabilities. And that's powerful because once we understand that, Then we can start to create a healthier future for everyone. Well, huge thanks to our expert for guiding us through this fascinating research. It's been a pleasure. And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on another deep dive. Keep those research papers coming, and we'll see you next time.